There are two dangerous things to do. One of them is introducing Nassim Taleb. So I will tell you what the second one is later. Nassim refuses that I recite his bio. What he is most proud of is his Uber rating. It's 4.9.
Yeah, very nice.
But it also depends, but I mean 4.9 is good because he takes a lot of Uber. It doesn't depend on the actual number. It depends on how many trips.
No, beyond it becomes a law of large numbers.
Yes, exactly. It's a low, yes.
We did that in Uber. We had a whole week of a discussion of that.
Now,
he attended my seminar on the law of large numbers.
Now, he's also he's written several books. One of them is called Nasatit Vlastni Kutsi.
Yes.
And the other one is Na Vlastni Riziko. Mahek?
Yeah,
these are some of the leftover translations. So Nassim's books, which you all know about,
This is called adverse selection.
Yes,
because I brought the books, the English one disappeared.
Have been translated
Spanish,
into 41 languages. One language more.
No, there's Russian. The problem is what's left over is languages nobody knows
I'm
exist.
doing the introduction.
Yeah, I know this. Okay.
So 41 languages, one language more than Gibran Khalil Gibran, and he had a course here where I think most of the languages were represented because people came from all over the world, from Europe, from Africa, from Bangladesh, from Brazil, from Peru, and they all took their books, and these are the two only languages that nobody came from to take during the workshop. So they're still here.
You never know.
Now, what's the second most dangerous thing to do? The bravest and second most dangerous thing to do is to talk about Lebanon in times of revolution. And so I think you're very brave and you're sticking your neck out. So, and we all salute you for this. And please join me in welcoming Nassim.
Thank you. Maybe we'll figure out what languages these are. No, I'm okay. So, I'm going to talk about. We're starting late, so we have about an hour of slides, or maybe if we get bored, we stop, and you guys can ask questions.
Question.
Yes.
Can we carry on the lecture in Lebanese?
No, not this time, because I'm not mentally prepared for that. This is for Claude, the seat. For Claude. Okay. So let me next time, or I can translate it. I can redo it. And given it's localism, you're obligated to do it in your own language. Also, I can concentrate if someone takes my picture. So do it surreptitiously or don't do it. Thanks. So the inserto is what I've been working on. That has a lot of stuff. So it's 2,300 pages so far, and at some point I decided to write something that is a little denser than the inserto and limit it to 30 pages. So I wrote something called Principia Politica, and I did it Talmudic style, where you have the principle and then you have comments around it. I don't show the Talmud here in Hebrew because this is for Lebanon, and I don't want the people to be arrested. Anyway, so the LAU people to be arrested. So this Talmudic style, which is effectively not necessarily Talmudic, it was used by scholastic scholars, where you have commentary around principles. So so it's been sitting online now for about 6 months, 9 months, Principia Politica, linked to this talk, and for a bizarre reason, it's my most influential work. Because Donald Trump, for example, lifted a paragraph, from it in his budget, okay, on how to put skin in the game in universities. That's in Principia. The Russian government decided to start a university with an expiration date because one of my principles is that no institution should ever be started with an expiration date. So this is my most plus other stuff, plus the term pedophrasty that's in it. This is 30 pages late, not even 30 pages. Now it's 20 pages. Pedophrasty is circulating as a description of using children to win an argument, pictures of children. So this is from Principia Politica. I'm not going to talk about Lebanese central bank. I'm going to talk about something that is more general, more structural, and that could be used for the thing. So let me start. Okay, localism. What is localism? I know that you always invariably have young communists, but I don't see many of them. So communism is a way to maximize the best of libertarianism and communism, in a way. Because localism can lead you to a kibbutz, for example, or a moshav. They work better than kibbutz. Or can lead you to any form of anarchism. So the idea of localism is that, and we're going to see the overriding principles later, is that nobody should control your life but yourself or the friends you have an agreement with if you want them to control your life, whether or not you make it reciprocal. That's the principle. We're going to see something interesting. I have a heuristic that tells me, sorry, I gave it away. With the picture I gave it away here is Switzerland. I have a very simple heuristic that tells me if a country is well functioning. And that heuristic is how boring the front page of the newspaper is. So at Geneva, okay, they're interested by the most boring stuff. Traffic, new traffic lights in Geneva, and then you have people fighting over that. So this is, if you take the front page of the Tribune de Genève, the most read articles, absolutely nothing to do with anything, and the most boring thing, unless you have a vested interest in Geneva. By comparison, when you look at the political discourse in Lebanon, you put on the radio, you start seeing Putin meeting with this guy and that guy, geopolitical discourse, all these words, the region, they define the region, they define Lebanon as part of a region and decide that it's the region, okay? And of course, it's not by bottom up, it's top down. And for example, to give you an idea, there's this fellow here, Jumblat, who's writing that, no, he did a good job, invoking that he's defending the Arabism of Lebanon and he is pursuing a holy muqaddas, holy thing against Israel. All right, so you define yourself by geopolitical aims when people in Geneva are defining themselves or are interested in, I don't know, in how many vacuum cleaners are they going to use, for the sidewalk, all right, or for the next official. That's what they deal with. So this is how you figure out if something well functioning. And in fact, to understand localism, Goethe was explaining that on a day that he was surprised on a day when the Holy Roman Empire was ended, after long years, people in his inn were more interested in the fight between the coachman and the innkeeper. Okay, that was their main focus, not on the end of the Roman Holy Empire. But when you read history books, and that's something I addressed in the Black Swan, when you read history books, you don't get a representation of what people were interested in at a time or what happened at a time. It's exactly like reading a history of New York written by a nurse at New York Presbyterian, okay, in the emergency room. So they have the feeling that New York is nothing but car accidents and heart attacks and stuff like that. That would be the idea. So when you read history, journalists are not interested in conveying to you what happened at any point in time as a statistical description. They're interested in what can grab your attention, okay? And not, so you have a bad representation of the world, and even locals start having a distorted idea of how they're operating. So the general principle, the first general principle, is nobody should coerce you into a political and economic system against your will. So if you're a communist, there's absolutely no reason why you should not live in a communist community or within limits, okay? And if you want to live in a tax-free state, there's no reason why anybody should stop you, provided you can find enough people to agree with you on that, okay? Or convince the local people to change system. That's the general system. It has constraints. And also the second point, and so that's quite relevant, but top-down states, nobody should coerce you into cultural, religious, or historical identity against your will, okay? So in other words, if you decide that the Lebanese are from Mars, and that's your cultural identity, I'm from Mars, and decide you self-identify as someone from Mars, it's your right. No state should ever, but you're going to have a hard time, of course, convincing others that you're from Mars, but it's your right, okay? You don't have to take anybody's cultural definition from the top. So the problem of Christianity, and here I have it in, of course, the original language, which is the Greek of the Levant. Luke was 631, which tells you, do to others, okay, what you'd like them to do to you. And that it messed up Christianity and has messed up the modern world with interventionism. That's the golden rule. People think it's an advancement. In fact, no, it brings busybodies, because I prefer the via negativa. Don't do to me what I don't like to do to you, rather than come in and try to run my life because that's the way you like it. For example, I have to force people, because I love squid ink, to force people to eat squid ink every Monday and Thursday, and of course on Sunday for lunch, because that's what I like. I'd like to do to others what I'd like them to do to me. Okay, that's not how things should operate, and the problem that we have had for a long time is that the execution of interventionista, people who think that they want to do what's best for you, all right? Typically they love the state because the state knows better, and they're both state-loving, and they have these NGOs, how to improve Africa and stuff like that. So they think that they're representative because they've taken a class on justice, that they want to impose it on others, okay? So the other wrong the principle, of course, no rent seeking. Rent doesn't mean collecting rent, in Harlem for your, the thing where you have 1/3 of the building in Harlem and collecting rent on it. No, that's not rent seeking. Rent seeking is someone who uses a position of privilege. Can you hear me from the back, or is it loud enough? Yeah, okay. Uses privilege to get an income that does not contribute to economic activity. In other words, that it creates a zero-sum gain. So to me, when I see the reason I don't accept awards is partly by ego, because accepting an award means you're limiting yourself to that award, but I don't hide it. The other one is much more serious, is that awards are zero-sum gain. Anything zero-sum is unethical for me. Okay, by accepting an award, you've taken something from someone else. But by making $1 million doing something, okay, you've added to the system. So you have two kinds of people. You don't have the rich and non-rich. You have those who earn money, and the bad people are the predators, cronies, rent seekers. Okay, someone who wants a commission because he's in government knows someone. Patronage, someone who has a friend. That's a rent seeker. A former president who lobbies for, or sits down, that is rent seeking. Okay, I won't go into former U.S. presidents, but you know who I'm talking about. Okay, so rent seeking is the enemy, and someone shall not exploit you. And rent seeking, and we're going to see how it leads to localism, because it's very hard to have a large centralized state without rent seekers. Okay, they grow like mushrooms in a centralized state. Finally, iatrogenics primo non nocere, or nocere in Latin, means you should not, no policy should have side effects, okay? You're responsible for side effects. First rule, this is a Hippocratic rule, first do no harm. So that's a strong principle, visibly, very strong principle, first do no harm, because it applied to everything. And in the inserto, you can see that it appeared in the Black Swan and stayed. Every other page, there's a mention of something related to iatrogenics. The harm from a policy. Like, for example, Thomas Friedman think it was good to invade Iraq. There's been harm from the invasion of Iraq. He's not paying the price. And we have known about iatrogenics since That's a picture in the Louvre. For some weird reason, Hammurabi's rule, okay, Hammurabi's law, his code, is in the Louvre. I can't figure out why. And when I went there, I mean, no Frenchman. I was in a building giving a lecture about Hammurabi's law, and to someone who's an empty suit, what they call empty suit, Bernanke. Bernanke was there. I mean, I was lecturing, and I said, this guy is an empty suit. He's not responsible for the harm he can do. Invoked Hammurabi's rule, which was in a building. And nobody had heard of Hammurabi in France. I mean, the French know stuff that you'd never know, right? But they didn't know about Hammurabi, and it was in a building. It was like 100 meters away. So I went to take a picture, and of course, Hammurabi's law, 3,800 years ago, says that if you build a building like this one, and the building falls and kills the owner of the house, the architect shall be put to death. It's not like they don't like architects, but you shall not create risk and walk away from it. Plus other, things. And effectively, the eye for eye comes from Hammurabi's law. So you cannot have control, you cannot have a good control of the heterogenics and their effect and figure out who has, because, we judge people on intentions in the modern world, not on effectively on the results. So people's good intentions, they want to do good, okay? So, and wreck a country, do a lot of damage, and continually do it, normally under Hammurabi's law, should be, maybe Thomas Friedman can't put to death a person who killed 200,000 people. They'll kill him, put him to death 200,000 times, according to Hammurabi's rule. So, this is, okay. And then the other thing is, in my last book, so the Incerto is 5 books. The last one was Skin in the Game. And the last one was developed an obsessive disorder with universalism. Kantian universalism. In other words, that between you and the state, according to modernity, there's nothing. There are individuals, there are states. You don't have intermediate layers. You don't have intermediate things. Okay? So, and of course, it's not consistent, and we're going to see how. But you want to eliminate basically everything between you and a state. Between you and, they want to eliminate, for example, nationalism is a form of Kantian universalism. There's France, like en France, and then citizens, okay? And then with empty things like liberty, which they don't have, and other things like that. So, liberté. So that's Kantian universalism. That came from the Enlightenment, and it's very dangerous because there are different layers, there are different relationships. All that is ironed out, and they don't understand. Okay, so, and another principle is Greek versus Roman. I created this artificial distinction just to piss off some people, but it's not really Greek versus Roman. It's a metaphor based on something I picked up in Polybius. But the main difference is between people who believe that things that work in theory are okay, and others who are Roman. The Romans did not like theories, and actually didn't like the Greek philosophers. So whether you like ideas or you like practice. So as Jorgi Berra said, in theories there's no difference between theory and practice there is. So you never judge anything by the intentions. That's my main, the thing. I had to put it on paper. Now, so this is, and I'm putting the principles now, so I'm glad you're filming us, and people in Lebanon will be able to see this. Hi. So putting the principles. Now, I'm going to explain what I'm doing. What am I doing here? My specialty is complexity, complex system, and the statistical properties of complex system. So you have to understand complex system. Now, what are complex systems? In 1996, I think, when I started getting involved in this, there was a paper saying that they found 281 different definitions of complex systems. Okay, so visibly, it's complex, right? But in fact, complex systems are much simpler, and this can explain what is a complex system and how it works. See this flock of birds. Okay, so complex systems, they focus on interactions between agents. So you have agents and they interact together. And things so because they interact together, a group of people will behave differently from a sum of individuals. Okay, like a bee colony doesn't behave like a lot of bees. It behaves as a unit. And this, in fact, it's very, very easy to figure out. And we're going to see how you can apply it to things that people didn't think about. If I know every single person's psychological makeup here, assuming that's possible, I still will not be able to predict the crowd. Okay, because there is a scale transformation. Something new happens when you put them together, and the crowd is different from individuals. So that's pretty much the idea of an ensemble different from parts. How interaction, we're going to see what I mean by interactions, how it gives something else. And then the other thing is it's built bottom up. Complex systems are not built top down. And the way I explained it in Antifragile is it's the main difference between a cat. If you have a cat, you have a cat, okay? And then you have a washing machine, no? They're two different items, okay? So the main difference between a cat and a washing machine, and the washing machine is engineered, it has some properties, it doesn't communicate with the environment, whereas your cat is a member of a larger environment, and usually you communicate with the environment if you're a complex system via stressors, like your apparatus via stressors. My body communicates with the environment. If I lift weight, it gets stronger. Your washing machine doesn't get stronger if you put weights on it. Okay, my bones get better when I put weight on them, and so they need to be volatile and communicate with the environment. Without stressor, they die. That's pretty much how complex systems operate, and they produce a lot of noise locally that washes out by scale transformation when you look at the ensemble. Like Switzerland has huge political problems locally, and they wane when you look at them in the aggregate. Okay, the exact opposite of engineered stuff, where usually it's the exact opposite. So we'll see what we mean by scale transformation. And self-organization is a complex system. Nature is a complex system. Last time I checked, there was no blueprint. It was definitely made by someone, God or whoever you decide to have made it, but there was no blueprint, okay? When you observe things, there's no instruction, no government, no nature function, and did function without us, and actually does a lot better without us. So this flock of birds, do they have a leader? Where's the leader? How do they behave? Is there a guide, blueprint? Okay, so Ana Qa'id al-Sawra. I'm the leader of the revolution. So people were very surprised to not get the point that we're used to things, centralized networks, like your washing machine, okay? Not decentralized network, like your body. Your body doesn't have a decision-making center. It has a lot of things, okay? And this is a distributed network, which is what we're having now with the revolution, or what you want to call it, let's call it the Lebanese process. It didn't reach the level of revolution yet. And a decentralized network, this is vastly more robust. It's what you have in the internet. You can have connection between nodes. This is simplified. And typically, networks start like this, and they evolve to go there, okay? So now the revolution is still here, and you see some nodes forming with a decentralized network. And that's the interesting part is that things change all the time in the rewiring and rewiring of a decentralized network. Whereas a centralized network doesn't rewire. What happens to it? It collapses, okay? It does collapse, which is what we're witnessing now. Typically, it just collapses, right? No, so it'd be very hard for Italy to collapse, okay? It's very easy for Saudi Arabia to collapse, right, on the left. And Saudi Arabia will collapse eventually. And that's what, Syria collapsed, same reason. It was in a black swan, actually. It was published 2007, so you can expect more of that to happen. Just pick a network like this on the left, and you can guarantee its collapse. A network by this, I mean decision-making center, okay? Decision-making center, not necessarily a political party. You can have a lot of political parties, but you have one decision-making, one administration, one decision-making, stuff like that. So, the one thing you probably don't know is that there's no blueprint in your DNA. People have this illusion that their DNA is a blueprint, like you have a blueprint to do anything. There's no blueprint with your DNA. How does it work? Local. All local networks who work together locally. And by miracle, we get the scale transformation, which is you. There's no blueprint. You think that DNA, there's one generalized code to produce it? No. Things by reacting to one another produce something with a general local guideline from the DNA. So, next. What do you guys think my main profession or self-declared profession is? Okay? No, but there's, on the web, why do people follow me on Twitter? Sorry, my hobby. Sorry?
Statistics. Bullshit detector.
Voila, there we go. Who said that? Okay, BS detector. So BS detector is, we're going to figure out what a BS is, all right? BS detection is what's called verbalism. Verbalism is use of terms that are very central to your discourse, but guess what? They change in meaning if you change the environment a little bit. Okay, so that's what I do for a living. And you try to grab things that are, it's not rigorous enough. You try to put some rigor and you figure out some defect in someone's reasoning. As we saw with the fellow Blatt, he calls himself a socialist, but at the same time he's a chieftain, and he's telling people, no, look how good we are because we are good at following people are blaming him for not having electricity, and then he's saying we're very good with revolutionary fights, which he's not fighting, right? But so that's a BS detection scheme. And then other, of course, BS producers around. So that's my hobby, okay? Now let's take the first BS, progressive versus conservative. Okay, that's verbalism. It's ill-defined. What does progressive mean? Everybody wants progress, okay? It's just the rate of progress for some people may diverge from that of others. So that's what people don't get. So you can have, some people want, nobody wants slavery, so conservative, some people may want slavery, but they're not, conservatives are not those who want to go back to what we were 2,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 100 years ago, or even yesterday. They don't mind, it's just the rate of progress. So this is, and Burkean conservative is someone who is progressive, but very cautious, slightly cautious. Some people want to be more cautious than others. So this is what, when you say globalism, progressive, conservative, it's meaningless to me. Okay, so I have to ground it into something. So, and then these words, sectarian, progressive, socialist, exploitation, racist, Arab nation, social justice, all these are meaningless. Okay, you have to put them in context, see, and once you try to figure out if they're verbalism or they correspond to something real. Okay, and typically they're verbalisms. Typically, typical verbalistic Westerner comes in, calls us a region, they went to Tufts or where you were, they read post-colonial studies, and they've read From Beirut to Jerusalem. And he has absolutely no clue what goes on. He actually wrote a book on complexity, Thomas Friedman, without knowing what complexity means. Okay, so you recommend the book to students if they want to figure out the misperception, misunderstanding of complexity. He wrote a book on complexity, and all he talks about is a top-down relationship between heads of state. And we're going to see that's not how it works. So, left wing, for example, let me give you a verbalism. Christian Lebanese are deemed to be right wing. Why? Hey, they want to use Phoenician languages, and they want to use, and they want, they're isolationists. They want to be, so Palestinians were attacking Christian Lebanese wanted to be isolationists. Okay, wanted to be, separate from the others, use their own language, whatever it is, not use the Arabic language to write, but local language. So they're right wing. On the other hand, and at the same time, they were supporting the Irish revolutionaries, okay, who were doing exactly the same thing. The Irish want to use their own language. Nobody speaks it, but still, they feel good about, claiming that it exists. And actually, some people speak it, but really, okay. And of course, they're separatists, the same idea. So these are left wing, others are right wing. So maybe because left wing is sexy, and those we like are left wing, and then you can classify someone as right wing. Okay, so left wing. So that is simply a verbalism because it's inconsistent. The same person is using the same thing, inconsistent across people around. Okay, so both are localist, by the way. And then you take, that was Germany, incidentally. The rise, what people don't get, is the rise of Germany and France throughout the ages didn't come from the state. The state in France only managed to centralize the country when Giscard was in power. And you know what happened since, okay? You see? While at the same time, as we're going to see, France was imposing a central state on others. Syria, when they occupied Switzerland, okay? So the success of France came in spite of the state, because the state was always weak and represented 5% of GDP. Maximum, its height, Colbert, 7-8% of GDP. Okay, so this is what people don't get about countries with a strong state, that the state came later, like China. China grew, the most civilized, the most developed country of its day, and sure enough, the state destroyed it. Same with the ancient Egyptians. So things develop, and then the state comes to kill it. So they take credit for a centralized state after the fact. So this will be clearer when I talk about the scale. What's the difference between an elephant and a mouse? The most mammals, I know one is bigger, but what's the main difference between them? Sorry? Size, what else? Okay, fragility. If you, this mouse, if you throw him out of the window, I don't know, I mean, in Lebanon, maybe nobody would complain, but here people may file some animal experiment in New York. So we can't do the experiment in New York, but definitely you can do it in Lebanon. So try it in Lebanon, throw a mouse out of the window, and it would laugh at you. Whereas an elephant, same height would be done, that's it. Okay, no more, I mean, it would be, it breaks a leg, it's gone. Which explains why you have many, many, many more mice than elephants. Okay, and if you want to come back next life, for those of you who can have tricks to do it, you want to come back for next life, come back as a mouse, not an elephant. Okay, so but there are benefits to being an elephant. Namely, you live longer, but you don't have a lot of elephants. Okay, so I mean, the large animals don't make it. Okay, because they're fragile, they seem to be more efficient, just like large corporations don't survive. They seem to be more efficient, but, and on paper they are more efficient. An elephant is vastly more efficient than a mouse. The cells are more efficient, the plumbing is more efficient, they live longer, but the species doesn't survive. So, and now, here we come, principle number one. Never describe, compare, or assess the effectiveness of political system without reference to scale. Okay? Number one. You cannot, and let's see why. You can be libertarian at the federal level in America, a Republican at the state level. You can be Democrat at a county level, and communist at the town level. Okay? And effectively, many people are. You see, so you have to refer to scale. What's the difference between in a regime between China and Singapore? Practically none. Okay, it's a matter of scale. Okay, so you see, Singapore is 6 million, all right? Okay, so scale matters. Now this, I mean, so let me give you a piece. I'm going to talk a lot about Switzerland, a little bit about Switzerland. But the Swiss were never proselytic about their system, maybe because they're Swiss. First of all, it's a boring country, as mentioned, but it's the best functioning one. They had their own civil war, religious civil war in 1847, right before us, you know, to guide us. But we didn't follow their model. And we're going to see how there's still time to follow their model. But the Swiss have the highest level of social services in Western Europe, better than the so-called Scandinavian model, okay? At the same time, they have the lowest tax rate in Western Europe, okay? So nobody thinks of trying to emulate the Swiss. Wasn't it Bernie Sanders talks about Scandinavia, and they give up on this. I mean, they have a 70% tax rate, went back down. Now it's lower, the taxes are lower than those of residents in New York. Okay? But they never want to emulate Switzerland. People talk about Balkanization, not about Helvetization. Okay, all right. So, but this is a very well-functioning country. We're going to see why, because they're profoundly localist. Okay, and politics is not scale-free. By accident, they did figure it out. They don't want to share because they're selfish, maybe. But one thing I don't understand is that last time Assad had a meeting somewhere, where did they have their meeting? Did they go to Somalia? No. Where did they have their meeting? Switzerland. Where did Lenin? Where was Lenin located before the Civil War? Before they took over, before the October Revolution. Where was he located? Switzerland. So it didn't hit him that that system, the reason he was in Switzerland, it was no accident, it's non-random. And of course, where was Nabokov located when you know, Switzerland. Okay, so the both sides, the reds and the whites, it never hits you that, hey, if you're in this place, it's non-random. I know that people are boring, but you're there. So maybe there's something about the political system that causes you to be there. Okay, so localism is not a political system; it's a structure. And okay, we'll see how. Now something more developed about it. Now I presented complexity. I gave the introduction, presented complexity, went into scale. Now there are a few things about scale that are quite bizarre that we can explain that people don't get. That you remember when I said that if I know the psychological makeup, each one of you, it doesn't need, okay. Now, the morality of a group has pretty much very little to do with the morality of the individuals composing the group. That's Adam Smith. He picked it up from Mandeville. Mandeville actually said a very society composed of vicious people, okay, would be virtuous. Adam Smith picked it up by saying it's not the benevolence of the whatever. So there's scale transformation, and that is a system. What they call capitalistic system, which in fact is not capitalistic, but you mean the free market system, the free enterprise system. That system manages to use your greed in order to reduce poverty, all right? Now, I mean, so that's a system that has good scale transformation under good laws and rules, between the members, okay? So, but there's something even more interesting here. When we talk about racism and stuff like that, we can easily show how a neighborhood that is composed of people who are not racist will end up being segregated. Like, let's take the one, what's the pointer? Let's take this neighborhood here. It looks like a segregated neighborhood. You have three colors, the blue, the orange, and the white. The white means nobody lives there, okay? It looks segregated, no? If you start with a random allocation of people, and the people want to live in a neighborhood under the condition, they don't mind being the minority. They love others, but that no more than 40% of the people are of their ethnic group. No more than 40%. No, I mean, fine, satisfied is 40%, but no less than 40%. Okay, I'm comfortable to have 40% of the people there, not from Amiens, all right? But I want 40% of people to be from Amiens. What happens? Because of the interactions, you end up having a racist neighborhood without a single member being racist, okay? You see? So this is what is strange about the development of the aggregate behaves very differently. So we have to understand the structure, not the individuals, not the intentions of the individuals, and not their morality. So here you end up having racist neighborhoods, well, racially completely separate neighborhoods with not a single person being racist, okay? So every step you move, and then when you move, someone else will move, because if I move, if I have the immune and non-immune, these two categories in life, I move, and the non-immune also want to have 40% non-immune, okay? So you make him move, or her move, and then so you end up with a chain reaction. And over time, neighborhoods end up being racist. So this is quite interesting, but there's something actually even worse, okay? When I look at what I call homophily, homophily means like people like you. I like people who are like me, and scale. When people say racist, I don't understand what it means, because I'm going to explain to you. Is it racist for the French government to give the French passport to a child born of French parents in a Mongolian hospital while denying the French passport to children in the same hospital born of Mongolian parents. Is it racist? No. Sorry? I mean, the French, okay, so you think that it's not racist for a government to grant its children of its citizens a passport and deny to others, although they were born in Mongolia. Okay, so there are inconsistencies in the way we define racism without a scale, you see. Is it when people tell you that, oh, you're racist, what does racist mean? In their definition is you give privilege to people of your genetic background, okay? Now, when you go to school, you take your children to school in the morning, and in the evening, it's racist to pick up your children, not some other child who may be less privileged, because the only link you have to their children is genes, okay? It's so unfair to deprive other children, okay? Likewise, when you have your Thanksgiving at the table, you should not invite your family members because what links you to them is genetics. You should invite random people, okay? And that's abstract universalism. If you take the thing to a logical conclusion, that's what it leads you to. But what is the solution? Scale, and let me explain. The Arabs figured it out. It's very simple. There's Arab hospitality, particularly in the desert, is everybody knows about it. It's they're extremely generous. If someone drops by, they're going to treat you like a king. Deprive themselves if they don't have enough food to feed you. Now, one person shows up, treated like a king. 2 people, same thing. 3 people, I don't know. And then 5 puff, they massacre them. No? So that's a tradition. That's what. Okay. So that's a historical tradition. 5. So they love 1. Okay, and 5 and above, they kill you. All right. So this is where. So you could be perfectly racist towards groups, but not towards individuals. That makes okay. That does not. It cannot be accommodated by Kantian universalism. According to Kant, you're inconsistent. Okay, you scale without scale, nothing works. So it's okay to pick up your child from school because you're not dealing with a group, but you're dealing with one individual. Okay, so this is the idea. So homophilia and scale, if you like people, so groups and individuals. Very often you hear people explain, and I think that universalists are typically. Inversely, they love groups, but they hate individuals because, for example, a lot of these snotty Oxford left-wing people, I'm sure they have never invited, after an Uber ride, the Pakistani Uber driver, for tea. Okay, they don't do it. Okay, but yet they talk in the abstract. They love that these, and the larger the group, the more abstract the relationship is. You see, so and that was explained to me. I discovered that when we talk to Israelis and Palestinians, they can get along when 2 Israelis shows up in a West Bank village. There's hospitality. They get along, but when troops arrive, it's a completely different story. And when a bus of people from Brooklyn shows up, they're not excited. So there's maybe the number 5 is the limit, or they got to be limited. So this is where that's something not picked up by the systems. Another thing about localism, that what we didn't know about animals, is that in fact there's a lot more peace in natural environment than we think. Again, for the same reason that those who talk about predators and stuff like that attract your attention more than those who talk about peace. Just like my story of New York Hospital. There was someone who is Presbyterian, someone at New York Presbyterian writing her biography, or daily life, would give you a different account from someone in, who I don't know likes fishing in Central Park. Okay, get different stories. Same thing. We didn't know that wolves. They're very smart. They know how to have neighborhoods. These are wolves in Yellowstone. Last summer, and the experiment shocked people. This is how they move. This is one pack, one. Look at it. They don't overlap. They know how to manage the territories, and they hardly overlap. They try to figure out where there's enough space for them. So they have a good, very nice political thing. They don't even have a central government for that. Okay, although I'm sure someone may try to claim credit for it. So another thing now is minority rule, and we're going to put things together when I discuss, when I link it to Lebanon. What's a minority rule? And how do you avoid the minority rule? Is anybody here allergic to peanuts? Okay, so if we had one person allergic to peanuts here, and assuming there's no party because it's last minute, but there is a party, there's no party. And you had a party, you had to eliminate the peanuts. And actually, if you get on American airline, if one single person is allergic to peanuts, no other passenger can have peanuts. Okay, so that's a scale transformation, and let me explain it. One day, it's a chapter I think that people have read the most in Skin the Game, one posted. One day I was at a party, and a bunch of people from Jerusalem showed up. And I said, oh, these people are kosher. So do they have kosher food? The fellow looked at me and said, of course it's kosher. What? Yeah, the lemonade is kosher. What do you mean the lemonade is kosher? How many people are kosher in America? 0.3%. 100% of the lemonades are kosher, except that, and here you have that, this U here is an indication that it's kosher, confirmation, let's say, because they don't even bother looking. Why? That's the minority rule, because if I'm a producer of lemonade, okay, it's much cheaper for me to make everything kosher, hire a rabbi once in a while, than have, merchandise like, have a kosher truck, non-kosher truck, kosher this, non-kosher this. Get sued if I mix the merchandise, and then you go to the supermarket, then you have a kosher aisle. No, it's very simple. Sell all lemonades, make them all kosher, okay? So someone from Mars, okay, observing the food habits, doing a marketing survey, by looking at how people drink lemonade, would think that 100% of people on both coasts in America are kosher based on their drinking. That's a minority rule, okay? The scale transformation is the neighborhood now is kosher in drink when 0.3% of the members are not kosher. That's the intolerant minority, okay? So, and that's an asymmetry, and that asymmetry is very dangerous because it may cause some neighborhoods to, how do you protect yourself from it? By breaking up the area in independent neighborhoods where you don't have that asymmetry, because for political reasons you have that asymmetry can be severe. I mean, in one way, it gave us ethics, because all you need is one person to be ethical for everybody else to behave ethically. But it can lead to religious fundamentalism. You have one Salafi with 100 people, the 100 will behave Salafi, all right? I've seen it, okay? So this is why minority rules are very dangerous, particularly when you have, so that we have minority rules, and then now we have the opposite of minority rule, majority rules, okay? Where let's say that you have country like Canada, okay, there's a country like Canada, and a friend of mine in Quebec said it's simple. Whenever people claim to be bilingual, in other words, you can use both languages, people speak English. And whenever people say French only, guess what they speak? Both languages, okay? So it means that if you merge Canada, if Canada were a single country, the Québécois would all be speaking English. You'd lose that diversity. So you had to break it up in smaller countries and use the French language exclusively in these places. So this is why Louisiana would have been French speaking if it were smaller and if things were done better, you see? So that's a problem with majority rule, and that's what Tocqueville said, that the American Constitution was the most adapted to to protect people from the majority rule. They didn't think of the minority rule, which is different. And minority rule really says that the most intolerant in food or in beliefs or in anything is going to run the place. Okay, so all you need is a small percentage of intolerant people to run the place. On the other hand, the majority rule will tell you that just like so I remember one day I had I try to be, I try to be nice to normal people, and I try to be an asshole with politicians. So I ran into one day, there was a conference that had every single big fart was there, and there was a fellow called Amr Musa. Okay, and I was talking to him about Egypt. Actually, I gave a lecture, spoke about minority rule and majority rule, and explained Egypt, look at Iraq, the Yazidis, so they had their own state that still they'd be existing. And he said, you're sectarian. Okay, about me, accusing you of sectarian. So that's verbalism. So I went up and explained how the fellow is incoherent, because his sectarianism means does not submit to a certain majority rule that belongs to a certain religious group at the expense of other minorities. All right. He was so upset, but that was fun. Okay, and he was a little agitated, not that upset. But so the idea of majority rule is why we have America. We have a federation. It works. It would have worked better if it were closer to Switzerland, although at the time America was small. Now, an interesting thing about France, of course, I want to show you that France tried to mess up with Switzerland. They invaded it for a while, and the first thing they did is eliminate the canton system. Switzerland is built, it has 20-some cantons. Some of them have 20-some thousand people, all right? And it's bottom up. And that concept of localism, the Swiss localism, sort of like the one we had here, is called subsidiarity. It means nothing is ever done higher up if it can be done locally. If it cannot be done locally, say a train system, then you go up. The army, you go up. But if you can do it locally, you do it locally. Decision got to be made locally. So in other words, she or he who drinks your water, okay, should be managing your life, okay, and nobody else. That's a concept of bottom-up things. So now that we're talking about systems and majority rule and minority rule and how to protect and how scales works, let me tell you the failure also, attention people, there's that illusion that you can transform things by putting people together and make them sing Kumbaya. You know, they can sing Kumbaya by a fireplace, we all love one another and let's all be one country. It doesn't work. Every time you do it, a large majority eliminates the minority, okay? Which is why Syria makes no sense to me, okay? You should have separate states in Syria, because if, you know, they made it a normal country, then you'd have, the Alawites would be, you know what, completely swamped by the majority, and the Christians as well. So it turned like, they'd be like the Shiites in Saudi Arabia, okay? They have, that's the majority rule, that's what it does to you. Whereas if the Shiites had a separate state or separate jurisdiction, then they'd be better off. So that's a Kumbaya problem. You're never going to get Kumbaya because of asymmetries in the population. It's not going to work. So the idea that I figured out that, I don't know if you've had a roommate, okay, and you know, I've had, I think the only time I was very close to assassination, or committing an assassination, was when in school when I had a roommate. And okay, so, but people get along a lot better as neighbors on the same floor than as roommates, no? Okay, why should it work for states? Well, guess what? It does work for states. So our friend Yanir, he's a interesting fellow, but he's obsessed now with Trump, so we have to wait for him to recover. Okay, so he studied Yugoslavia, the obvious places, Yugoslavia and Switzerland. I said, what's the difference between these two countries? And he figured it out. If people had political boundaries, they're okay. Let's think of Switzerland. Switzerland is worse than Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had at least one language. I mean, Serbo-Croatian is practically within, like, is the difference between Serbian and Croatian is smaller than between Amjun and the next Maronite village up the mountain, okay? The difference, okay? But yet, guess what? I mean, not just some small differences, they made the language big. Switzerland has 4 languages and 2 religions, okay? And they solved the problem after the civil war that they had before it became fashionable to have religious civil wars in the Mediterranean, okay? So that's it, good fences make good neighbors. So he figured out that where the political boundaries or physical boundaries coincided with religious boundaries or ethnic or linguistic boundaries, you had peace. And those people got along very well if that was the boundaries, okay? So, incidentally, one person criticized my hyperlocalism about Lebanon by saying, yeah, there's a lot of corruption in the municipalities, everybody knows it. Says that's the whole point. Guess what? Is that corruption is much more visible in municipalities. And that's why you know about it, okay? Because you can see it. So so this is sort of like the idea, okay, first, and then now we're gonna go next to Lebanon. And I'm gonna give you my little localist cultural spin, okay, outside the politics. So my idea, anyway, is in Lebanon. How do you create a confederation in Lebanon? Very simple. Lebanon, the thing is, why didn't I think of it before? Because every single person in Lebanon wants to be president. And the only way, every single Maronite wants to be president, every single Shiite wants to be whatever, and so everybody wants to be. So it is like there's so everyone, and of course the Greek Orthodox, we have nothing, so we're forced to having a real job. But everyone else, they want to be president of this, they want to be prime minister. Every Sunni wants to be prime minister. So how do you solve the problem? Well, you give many of them the chance to be prime minister. You just take the existing qada. You don't do it along religious lines. Okay? You don't do it along religious lines. You let people figure out what they want. You just create. We already have some kind of difference. But so you do it. You take these areas, however you define a qada, unless people decide to split in half or merge or whatever they want. Okay, according to head count, and that's it. Now you have a confederation with minority rule and majority rules. Okay, like the United States, like Switzerland, and then you let people. The state had decided sometime to put Lebanon. So when I was a kid, Lebanon was in the Mediterranean. Okay, and then suddenly it moved to the Lebanon suddenly moved to the Middle East, which is fine. So it's fine. You self-define. You think your geography means that Dubai is 3 hours. How far is Dubai from Beirut? 3.5 hours away. Okay, so if you think Dubai is closer to Beirut than Cyprus, which is 18 minutes flight, that's fine. That's your right. You're close to Dubai. That's your neighbor. That's your region. All right. But don't impose your region on me. I self-define as someone whose closest thing is Anatolia. That's how I define myself. Okay, that's it. So and that's pretty much the history of Lebanon. To go back to these idiots who come from the American universities and they call it the region, and then they learn Arabic in the textbook thinking they're going to speak it locally. It doesn't work. Okay, so. And people don't realize effectively, and this is a genetic map, but it has nothing to do with genetics, actually. We're going to see no, that's not how it works. More to do with food. No, where is my, no, sorry, this is a map, okay? This is a map of genetics of Lebanon, okay, the blue, okay? The dominant, so who are we closest to? Look at it, the Palestinians and their cousins. We can discuss those. Cyprus, okay, Anatolia, Azerbaijan, Georgia is actually split between a bunch of things. Armenia, believe it or not, the Armenia are closer to us than northern Iranians, especially. Okay, northern Iranians, okay, Azerbaijan, northern Iranians, and the Greeks, and of course southern Italians should be blue here, but they took the color per country. Okay, it's political rather than geographic. So if you're self-defined among these people, okay, and I prefer to forget about genetics, go by this. Those who eat like you are the people you should identify with. That's how I identify. Someone else wants to identify with those who eat with their hands rice, bad rice, that's fine. Each person should be free to identify culturally the way she or he wants to do so, okay? And I was pretty ticked off when again the Phoenicians created the Mediterranean. They created Western civilization. They transmitted Babylonian and Egyptian technology and civilization to the West. Okay, the Phoenicians are Mediterranean. Okay, without the Phoenicians, the world would be different. Okay, Europe would be different. Or what we call Europe actually is a very interesting invention, because it was Europe until when the Ottomans were here, Europe was not Orthodox. Okay? And then it was Protestant or Catholic, so it was called Europe. And then suddenly when they had the EU, now Europe became, so Europe doesn't have real boundaries, it's a self-defined category. The much more robust is the Mediterranean, where you see commonality in food. Or the Red Sea, the same people here, or North Atlantic, same food, or the Gulf, with whether you're on the Indian or Arabian side, the same food. But the interesting thing is I went to the Met, and you have all these universities, I call it a monoculture. They're talking about Lebanon, Royal Middle East, and stuff like that. And then look at it. Lebanon is Mediterranean, Transcaucasus, and Near East. What the hell do we have to do with Middle East? Okay, I mean, what is this Middle East? It's a definition, colonial definition by people east of somewhere. So they bundle everything in the same category. It's like non-elephant animals. You put them together, and then non-elephant animals from there on are going to be Middle East. That's the idea. You're using other people to define yourself in relation to the West. Like someone in London, you're east of them, and you're defining yourself by the east of someone in London. It's actually worse even with the term Shami, because then you're defining yourself to the north of someone else. You don't define yourself according to someone else's definition, all right? So, and Levant, even its term, the way they used to call themselves is Canaan, okay? Not even Phoenician, Canaan or Lebanese or Levantine Kanaani or from there. Anyway, so to continue with Lebanon, I'm pretty much done. I don't know if I'm well on time, okay? To continue with Lebanon, this is, okay, by the way, this, you find it, this is Anatolian. It's not Greek, it's Anatolian. And if you see it in Greece, what's the reason? Sorry? No? So, sorry? The Ottomans also are Anatolians. It's because what people don't quite understand is that we come from Anatolia, from Caucasus, Anatolia, all right? And brought a lot of stuff with us, including wine from Georgia, okay? We brought a lot of stuff with us, and then became Mediterranean, of course. That's the Phoenician, that's the current Lebanese population. And then from Zalua, discovered, of course, he was this big, why are the Phoenician and the Greeks genetically very close? Well, it's not because they mixed. What's the reason? Because they come from the same place, you see? We came from the same place, okay, different route. These guys went this way, and we went south. And the Cypriots are halfway between us. So that's our origin, you see? And what happened is that people have this illusion that there's been a lot of mixing in Lebanon, and then people population. And I'm doing genetics. It all started with a war paper. I was studying war and discovered that the incidence of past wars was way overblown. Same story of my New York hospital nurse writing her daily memoirs, right? So you think that the past was violent. So when you look at the troops who went to Spain, you know the Arab troops that went to Spain? They only left genes in, guess where? Tunisia. There's no Arab genes in Morocco, no Peninsula genes in Morocco. So you wonder how. You need a lot of troops. Okay, at the time, they were not rich enough to have a lot of troops. So there's a lot of peasants and a few soldiers. And these soldiers didn't transmit a lot of genes, and very few massacres, much less than people claim. So the population of Lebanon has been very stable over the past 4,000 years, 3,000 years, I would say. We have Bronze Age DNA, not too different from local population, and the Greek Bronze Age DNA, not too different from local population, especially in the Asian and in the Peloponnese, and both are very close to Anatolians. Okay, so we haven't had a lot of people invading, and incidentally, Turkey, right? They think that they came from Turkey, from whatever, from Mongolia, from that parts. What are the Turks? The locals, okay? 90%, well, here they're Armenian, here they're Kurdish, and here they're Greek, the Turks. They don't know it. When you do the DNA, really, don't they look like us? So, okay, so why, we didn't look like we come from China. So visibly, the cultural history wants them to believe one thing, but only the language traveled. Because incidentally, language is a minority rule. Because where you're at a table and everybody speaks foreign languages, and one person speaks English, everybody will speak English, which is how, Indians speak English. And I don't think they have a lot of ancestry from that rainy island. And the same thing that the Turks don't know it, but they speak Turkic with 92% of the DNA local. Hasn't changed. So anyway, so this is, at the end, I was talking about identity and position, and I should be free because I'm localist to identify as someone as part of the Mediterranean, rather my region is what they call MENA, which is basically, MENA is the non-elephant animals for post-colonialists and using colonial terms, okay? Anyway, so now let's go to Lebanon, and I guess we're gonna start a conversation. And it's very simple. Why did they think about it? Why isn't Lebanon like Switzerland? It's mystery. It was the obvious solution because everybody has to gain from it. You see, if you're a Sunni fundamentalist, it's perfect. Tripoli, you make it, you do the no alcohol in Tripoli. That's your right. And then they will come and drink an amune, okay? And an amune, you're not allowed to have water. We don't allow water. Only after 6 o'clock, no water is allowed. You're free. That's your thing. So everybody's happy in the transaction. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me. And Nadine is on. So let me leave it on the best slide of the elephant. I have thing for elephants. So let me. Yeah. No. Or this one's good as well.
Your map is wrong. Zahle is much bigger.
I know you can. Beirut should be five cantons if you make it. All right. If you make cantons in Lebanon, Beirut will be 5 cantons, just so we don't have the Protestants of West Beirut in your voting district. That's.
Thank you very much.
She is.
Nassim. Seriously, it's a real privilege for us to have you give this lecture here, and to record it for people in Lebanon to listen to, because we didn't live stream it. Live streaming means that they will have to listen to it at 1 a.m. So one message to people who are watching it on YouTube later is that you can ask questions to Professor Taleb on Twitter or on social media or by email.
Yeah, hashtag localist Lebanon. I think we started the hashtag Localism Lebanon, and then we can discuss. But again, my specialty is not politics. My specialty is complex systems, okay, and the statistical properties of complex systems. But I'm not. Yeah.
But you've raised a lot of issues.
Yes.
Which have a lot of implications for the debates in Lebanon now. For example, with the electoral system, there is a demand on the street in Lebanon, which of course is not a demand of the street. It's just the loudest. There's no common demand, as you have shown.
No, but you've seen the common demand. They want electricity.
Yeah.
Okay, and Zahle can deliver electricity 24/7.
Yes.
Okay. Whereas the central state actually was bothering the municipality of Amioun when the municipality of Amioun was trying to do something with a local system, and they were, because of course you have all that patronage going on. So yeah, go ahead.
When they're asking for a single constituency in Lebanon, for Lebanon to be, the whole of the country to be a single constituency with a secular vote,
doesn't work.
Is this the exact opposite of your?
It's the exact opposite. My idea is you make local. People are allowed to move. That's the whole point. Is that you have laws, you have central laws. You're allowed to move. So if you are, let's say, gay, you don't want to live in Tripoli, the neighborhood that is dominated by Salafis, you're allowed to move. All right. Okay. And if on the other hand you are from Amioun and you like olive oils to be consumed at every meal, and you go to Beirut where they use other items, you're free to, you get the idea. People should be free to make their own laws, but you should not make it along sectarian lines. Make it along geographical lines based on population, and you'll see you have automatic reallocations.
That's my second question.
Yeah.
Because I'll ask two, because there's so many people who want to ask questions. My second question is, why does the boundary have to be physical?
Okay, so let me tell you why.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because the origin of the Lebanese system, Michel Chiha spoke about protecting boundaries, but they were virtual boundaries. They were not physical.
Okay,
they were not cantonization. They They were virtual boundaries between communities so that communities would feel secure. And they don't have to be in an enclosed geographic space. They can be mixed.
That's my worst nightmare.
And
that is my worst nightmare.
Okay, so
okay, and let me explain why this is my worst nightmare. The problem is that it puts us back in a sectarian system where you start voting for people based on your sectarian, whatever identity, rather than on geography, on water, okay? And let me explain. That's a millet system we inherited from the Turks, which actually worked sort of a federation where people lived in communities, interbred, the Orthodox, Sunnis with Sunnis, everything worked fine. Maybe it might work, and that's what he had in mind. The problem in Lebanon is that you need to do away with sectarianism because a lot of people do not identify with the sectarian system. I want to opt out of the sectarian system. So if Beirut, for example, you can have areas of Beirut you can have areas dominated by a certain religion, and you have others dominated by communists. It's fine. So long as your tax payments, the rule should be that your tax payments in the canton go first to the canton, okay, and then the tax expenditure is local. And why am I saying this about Lebanon? Because the sectarian system is easy, very easy to exploit. The sectarian system is geopolitical, rather, okay, because then you start connecting because you want to connect to Iran, Saudi Arabia, and stuff like that automatically. Whereas if the communities on non-sectarian grounds, look at how people vote for municipalities in Lebanon. They vote for one party for general elections, because they know that anyway the parliament doesn't count, okay? And they vote on abilities or on whatever, much more realistically for the municipality. And they started doing that. I mean, of course, it will take time to do that. So the idea is you eliminate confessions in Lebanon, you keep geography with the right to move, okay, and the right to work. You cannot ban anyone. So it's the same rules as Switzerland. They had a civil war, and then now they have a federal system. So why is it so? We have no choice, because you think that now magically we had a very bad government, okay? Basically the worst thing, that you do better without that government, okay, than with a government, no? And you do better without the agencies of the state. Idarat, the agencies are the worst actually than government. And let me explain. Someone who spends 20, 30 years inside an administration, it's like Kafka's castle. They own it. It's not the ministers come and go, but the deep corruption and the patronage are entrenched in these large administrative units. Same in America, same in UK, and you don't see it. And in Lebanon, people start to see it, but it took a long time. They keep blaming the minister, not the administration, where the corruption is taking place, deeply entrenched. And this would, by breaking up, the whole idea isn't just this, you break up these administration and you devolve as much as possible to the municipalities. ما بيحكك إلا ضفرك, the Lebanese expression that completely untranslatable. I tried on Twitter to translate it, okay? So you have so things are like electricity or whatever. Maybe electricity is not efficient for one town. Still not better.
Okay, so in my experience, everyone who says they have two questions always have three. So my third one is, what happens to the state and foreign policy and international relations?
Okay, so let me give you one constant in history. When you look at countries that are federations, okay, versus countries that are, nation states. Okay, the first thing is the model. The model is not foreign to us. Lebanon, the Phoenicians, or people known as the Phoenicians, were nation states people. They didn't have a large state. Why? The minute you have a large state, a central state, then people think of foreign relations and war. That's pretty much what dominates it. And actually, I'm really convinced that the nation state was invented for war, because non-nation states, city-states, were never interested in war. Okay, in defense sometimes, not even in defense. They were not even interested in defense for one simple reason. I am in Byblos, okay? Nabucodonosor shows up, okay? We'll make tons of money. How do you make tons of money? From commerce, okay? And building ships, you have know-how. Nabucodonosor shows up. Do you think he's going to kill everybody? Okay, you give him 10%, like a mafia loan, protection. money. And it's cheaper than an army, or 5%, whatever it is. You give them something. So this is why nobody's going to kill those who can feed them. So you tell them, listen, Nebuchadnezzar, do you want 100% of nothing, or 6-7% of something? And then he may come back with 12% and negotiate it down. And that's what they did. They did that throughout history, okay? Except for, of course, Tyre, they fought Alexander foolishly because they thought as an island that the guy would never get there, okay? And they didn't know the guy was like a nut. But aside from Tyre, the story of Tyre. So the whole thing is how so we're used to that model, okay? And Switzerland, they're neutral, okay? Is it by accident that the only country in Europe that was neutral was a country that was decentralized? And the Congress of Vienna, okay, America was right to war, developed the taste of war very late, but the Congress of Vienna, there were two countries that were democracies, and the two were federations. It's not an accident. So it looks like democracy comes out of federalism rather than reverse. Okay.
Thank you. Now I'll take questions, except from people from Immune are not allowed to ask questions.
But also mention
heard enough from Immune today. And please say your name and your local identification.
Okay, and one thing, and let me mention one thing, that the definition of the question is a sentence, or maybe two sentences with a question mark, just because from experience
not
with Lebanese. Yeah,
not
sorry?
a declaration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, both of you. How are you? I'm Raghida Dargham, and I have a question about how do you relate what you're saying right now to this incredibly important development in Lebanon. What do you want to say to the people who are doing a very interesting revolution, a very strong revolution? If you were to advise them how to direct it and where to go from here?
I thought, okay, my rule is very simple. The simplest thing is the better. Just shoot to have decentralization.
Yeah, but okay, let me finish the question because it's a little bit more complicated, as you well know. There are powers that are very powerful in Lebanon, and they are very prohibitive, and whether they are in government or in control because of allegiance to some other countries, and you know what I'm talking about. How do you get there? It's simple to say go to do this, but since this is so important, how do you get there?
From what I get, some of these powers or some of these people may also like decentralization. All right, actually they're the ones who requested it first. So I think, the more sectarian you are, the more you like decentralization, in fact. Okay, so the ones who didn't like decentralization were these Michel Aflaq-style idealists who want to merge everything, and these people who went to the Sorbonne learned the bad things from the French. The French always teach you what doesn't work there, not what works in France.
I'm not satisfied. I wish you would try it again because I didn't understand.
I gave a lecture on this. Okay, I'm not going to,
It's okay, but thank you.
I'm not in that business. Business of who to talk to for what. This is my principles, and that's it. So someone else can apply. Figure out the tricks. Okay, next.
So with this rule of, my name is Zaina Kenj. From Al-Matan?
Yes.
Okay. Shia. Okay.
Yes.
So with this rule of everybody is allowed to move wherever they want,
yes,
how can we not reach the state where, like we had in the last figure of the slide you showed us, where we just have people belonging to the same sectarian...
Because in Switzerland, people ceased to identify as Catholic and Protestant. And now they identify largely as French speakers or Romansh speakers, or less Romansh speakers. It's 60-40, okay, 60-40, German versus Italian, French, and Romansh. I mean, Romansh is tiny. So the idea, they cease to identify along religious lines. Okay, and Jews, they also have Jews there. Yeah.
Yes, they have like 3 or 4 languages, but in Lebanon we have we mostly identify by our sect because of
but some don't identify with a lot of people. The young people may not identify according to their sect, and it's a right. You see? So neighborhood can identify, in this context, should be able to identify the way it wants to identify. Okay?
I'm David from Dallas. I was wondering is there a way to anticipate whether something will be subject to an intransigent minority, like whether it's a susceptible minority?
Okay, so I'm going to give two answers. One quickly, and then one I'm going to answer another question. So you can figure out, for example, the religious fanaticism developing, and actually, typically, under some conditions, if, for example, the kosher drinks were too obviously kosher, they wouldn't be all kosher drinks, because you would have a reaction by others, you see? So if halal meat, for example, becomes too obviously halal, okay, some people will be repelled, because then it becomes a different matter. So that's the first one, minority rule. Okay, let me take another question, and then there's another point I want to make. Yes?
This is Roy from Washington, D.C.
Hi.
Hi. So how do you see the role of technology as a layer of like digital communication working with the decentralized system? Thinking that you could do commerce from anywhere in the world, would that just enhance it or actually make it in a different perspective?
I think technology is, okay, one thing I wrote in Principia, that technology makes the state vastly more intrusive than it was. So you think technology allows people, like in Lebanon, to have riots because the state is incompetent. But in places like the States, for example, here, technology had made the state vastly more intrusive over individuals. Okay. Now, let me make a comment about why I'm positive about the future based on what I see. You know, what happened to Churchill after the war?
He lost the election.
Sorry?
He lost the election.
Exactly. They kicked him out. What happened to de Gaulle after the war? The same. When did they call him back?
Like, yes,
Algeria, all right? So, and then, of course, okay, so you realize what, and then, of course, you know, you do your thing, and then you leave us, okay? Cincinnati. So the idea that what people don't fail to understand about popularity is that those who are popular, when people feel that there's war, are vastly unpopular at times of peace. Okay. So another comment: George Bush, who had the one mandate, George, he had everything right. He won the war, but guess what? War's over. Thanks, bye. We're done. All right. So this is what happens. What's happening today is that if you don't have, in the presence of war, then people rally along sectarian, whatever you want. In the absence of war and danger, a particular danger, then suddenly things wane. You see, okay, I'm more interested in governance, electricity, stuff like that. So which is why you got to let things run their course. And from what I've seen on the web, the very encouraging thing that they say, no, we don't hate you, but we love you. But you know what? You're very good at war, okay? And I prefer at times of peace to have some. And we'll give you a call if there's war. We'll definitely give you a call, and leave us your phone number. So this is what pretty much is happening now, and you can feel it. That's what people want.
Hi, Ziad Farizli. Unlike wolves, people have actually possessions, businesses, etc. in place. Yeah. How easy do you think it is for them to move around? Like if you're in Zahli and you want to move to Tripoli, if you're in Tripoli, you want to move to Saida. How long do you think that process is, and what is its cost on the population to do the shift you're talking about?
I mean, you have
from Ras Beirut, by the way.
From Ras Beirut. You have a lot of mobility in Lebanon, from what I know. I mean, you have mobility in Lebanon. Particularly, you had a lot of people moving out of areas. Okay, when the fundamentalists took over Tripoli, practically every single person who likes beer or bad arak, because they had bad arak in Tripoli, left. Okay, so people move around. People find ways to move around. Okay, so they don't have to worry about people find ways to either move around or to have, even within a neighborhood, you start having separation, and this you can observe in the United States. Pick someone from Amun, because I guess we need to be represented. I'm a nationalist from, I don't know, you're always surprised. Are you from Amiens?
Grandmother's from Kura.
Very, very good, very good. So here we go. All right.
So you said small is beautiful, but what is the right size? Like, for instance, New York City is large, but it's probably too large where it's not enough competition. You have poor governance. So, in terms of size, is it around the boundaries, or?
I think, the problem with this U.S. system is that the states got bigger, okay, and had more population. So I think we're overdue for New York State is a problem. California is a problem. You need to break California in at least 4 states to make things work. And New York City is larger than what? Than Norway, than Ireland, and than Lebanon, and a lot of places. New York City is unmanageable, as you know, completely unmanageable. We're here because we're not here because we like the government of New York City.
So in that context, Beirut probably should be 5 different cantons.
Beirut should be broken into cantons simply to have the diversity so people can be religious, non-religious. Look what's happening in Israel. In Israel, you start having complete separation, Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Okay, you can eat pork in Tel Aviv, and not that I haven't been there, at least But there's no, and the other one is mega religious. You can't drive on stuff like so. So when you read the things, this is why a lot of people wrote to me to give these as examples of countries suddenly breaking into neighborhoods that are, people from your kind. Okay, and progressively wanting to have a different jurisdiction, except that their government is, again, a nation state, not a federation.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Hi, my name is Marwan Tabet. Not from Immune, but you mentioned the examples of de Gaulle and Churchill. Very interesting. They're good. Now, we know that our leaders have been good at war. What is the prospect? What are the chances that they could invent a war, or bring that fear to people so that they stay in power?
I think it'd be too obvious now. So if you had another war with a certain neighbor today, first of all, listen, people don't mind war when you feel threatened by a neighbor. Is there a threat now? Okay, so if let's talk about it if there's a threat, all right? People detect superfluous wars.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, see, the street in Lebanon, what's happening in Lebanon is monstrous. It shows it's a revolution that's completely leaderless, that's working perfectly with people cleaning the streets. You have a social order taking place, spontaneous order. It's like textbook. It resembles what happened in New York in 2003 in August, when they had no power for 2-3 days, and then people took care of the traffic. There's suddenly newly emerging people with skills in directing traffic and all kind of things. And restaurants were giving away food. It's very similar. So I have the feeling that this is very positive, and it's creating bonds between Lebanese. And of course, now you have political programs. I'm very afraid of the left in Lebanon. They bother me more than sectarian. I mean, people, you guys are afraid of sectarian people. I'm not, okay? Because sectarian people can know how to disappear. The left, they're trying to exploit this by saying there are inequalities in Lebanon. The problem is the kleptocracy. It's not even, we're not even there to discuss inequalities. First, you got to clean the thing because it's a kleptocracy. And those you think are the ones stealing the money are the idiots, because someone who knows how to make money would not show it. So it's deep within the administration that you have all that stuff. I think the harbor, the rioters only caught up now on about the customs in Lebanon, the customs service.
The harbor, yes.
Yeah, Beirut harbor. It's horrible. This is where most of the money is going. Okay.
Thank you. Alexander from New York. A question about refugees. Any ideas over the years how refugees in wars, are they handled differently in the past wars as opposed to now?
You mean in Lebanon?
All over the world. I mean, when you create refugees by war.
The problem with refugees is, again, the same problem of migrations. The European Union is composed of people who don't understand scale transformation. How do I define typically what I call a pseudo, actually can I call them by their name? An empty suit, okay, like Angela Merkel and all these people. What does characterize all of them? Number one, they don't understand scale. And two, second order effects is that if you brought a Syrian, okay, and a Syrian refugee to a German town, that's fine. People will be welcoming and you have integration and be very nice. But if you bring 2,000 of them, okay, you have a problem. Okay, she didn't get that. You see, and know the truth. And then she got it late, when it was too late. You see, when the damage was done. So if you want to bring migrants, you have to understand that the local population may not like to have a change of scenery. Just like when you have the Arab tribes if you want to send a message, or if you want to go on a tour of the desert, make sure you're fewer than 5, okay?
Hannah, Minaka, Hermanka. What would you do at least 500,000 Palestinians?
They don't have 500,000 Palestinians.
They are in the south.
No, some 200,000 maximum.
Still, they are as many
okay, yes,
and then the Syrians right now, like 2 million maybe, or 1 million.
Okay,
And secondly, if we were invaded at once, like, Turkey decided to invade. That's one reason. One thing. What would you do? How do you solve them? Where do they exist?
Okay, so there's a question of Switzerland, of course, has an army, a standing army. No standing army. They have their citizen an army, and they have a concept they call armed neutrality. Okay, an armed neutrality. It means armed neutrality. So long as you make it hard enough for people to invade you, okay. But you don't invite them to just walk in. You get the idea. So, the armed. This thing is classical. It's solved. I don't think that we have to worry too much about being invaded by Turkey. Okay, but the Syrian refugee situation, I'm clueless as to how to integrate them because you're not gonna let them stay. On one hand, but on the other hand, sorry. I know they want to stay, but the job of the central government is to do exactly what today's central government does for law, okay, for law enforcement and for military purpose. So the difference between what I'm proposing in Lebanon has to be minimal to be applicable. Otherwise, it cannot be applicable. So the only difference is to transfer, even without calling it canton, power to the Qada. And if you let them handle their electricity contract directly, okay, and you start with that, and you figure out some will do a great job, like Zahli, and some will do a horrible job, okay? And people will see if their mayor is incompetent, will realize, because people are more interested in electricity than in geopolitics. And everybody in Lebanon, including those who are massively sectarian.
Thank you. I think we're going to,
we started late, but it's okay.
We're going to, okay, we'll have
one more.
Okay.
He didn't ask a question before.
Hi, my name is Kevin from Guadalajara, Mexico. I was wondering what you think about the role of the Central Bank of Lebanon and finance, in relation to all of this.
So let me put it on a record, because there's practically nothing I say in private that cannot be public for ethical reasons. So let me say it's on a record. You would have done a lot better without a central bank than with a central bank, because pretty much I call him Ramses XII, Salemi. Well, he facilitated the Ponzi scheme. It's not just that the Lebanese pound was too strong, but you drained resources by allowing the government to do, the government or that clique of people in power to do their game. He over 30 years destroyed all the industry we had in Lebanon that was competitive. Okay, simply because when interest rates are 13%, becomes a Ponzi scheme. You're draining resources. The example I give is someone inherits $212,000 from an aunt, okay, who died, with a will, for you to, whatever. Okay, so you inherit the money. You have two choices. You go put your money in Lebanese banks or in the government earning very high interest rates in dollars, thinking it's safe, or you open a workshop or whatever, artisanat, whatever you want to do, okay? But the thing it's obvious that it pays to give your money to the banks, to lend it to the government, to partake of the Ponzi. So it drained practically all investment from Lebanon. It killed the business, it killed the country, and our pound was the idea of fixing the pound, I have a last slide for that. So I have one slide to finish with, and that's directly my work as expressed in Anti-Fragile and elsewhere, which is the following. No free lunch, as Argentina would tell you. If the process, as you have on top, is managed, if you remove volatility from a system by minimizing variations on a day-to-day, what happens? The system collapses, okay? The only currency pegs that have survived now are Saudi Arabia, because they have the reverse problem. You can peg a currency to not be too strong. You cannot peg a currency to not be too weak, all right? So eventually the thing collapses. There's a simple rule that I learned my first year in trading from an old trader who said, nobody's bigger than the market. So a peg was a drain on Lebanese resources, and that's the problem. So Salami, is he incompetent? Certainly, all right? But the problem is keeping someone for 29 years or 26 years in that role was really, and a lot of people loved them because everybody was making money from the financial thing. So you turn Lebanon into a financial Ponzi scheme, investment-wise, and kill the local industry. I mean, the only thing they're getting is funds from Lebanese like us who go to visit, or buy land there, or buy apartments there. That was it.
Exit from that.
A haircut necessary in proportion to how much. Some people have tripled their money since 1994, 1992. A haircut in proportion to what money was made, and it has to be fair. Not too big a haircut. I don't think the recovery of the funds supposedly stolen is going to matter much, because I don't think it's as big as people think, all right? But, I mean, a lot of money was stolen. People love to see a few important people, particularly the arrogant ones, behind bars. That would be very nice. But the next step is to float the lira, pay the price, help the industry, make the place competitive, make investment. Stop begging from the Saudis every time to patch things. Okay, stop begging. Stop the begging, for God's sake. Okay, and I think in no time it'll recover. It's much easier than Greece because we don't have a fundamental government deficit. It's all the Ponzi thing, which is why Salami is unpardonable. Ramses 12, I call him. Ramses 13, I think. Yes.
I take it very personally because my name is Shhadi, so you're telling people stuff. But I want to ask you one last question, and this will be the final one. Let's go from the very local to the global.
Yeah.
Because we're not just seeing a revolt in the streets in Lebanon. We're seeing it in Chile, in Ecuador, in Algeria, in France, the Gilets jaunes, in Iraq now, it's Hong Kong, Russia. There's a global phenomenon happening. So is there a link between what's happening at a very local level and a global phenomenon?
Well, I mean, there are phenomena known as contagion. The same thing happened in Europe in 1848, but at the time the states could repress people, and people were weaker than they are today. And you didn't have the same rights. So I don't know if you read what happened in 1848. It was repressed, but practically 90% of the things we have today in social progress came from that 1848 generalized, it was all of Europe. So I think it's contagious, and I'm quite certain that, I'm just afraid that the left may, not the left, these communists may take advantage of it.
Thank you. You've given us a lot more to think of then the question and answer period has run. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks a lot.